Ex-wife weaponized our children to steal my apartment. Then she called my mother. The court had other plans. I bought my apartment when I was 28 years old. Before that, I spent 8 years in construction management, saving every spare dollar with a discipline that bordered on obsession. I skipped vacations. I drove a truck with 200,000 miles on it. I ate lunch I packed myself while coworkers went to restaurants. When I finally sat down at the closing table and signed the papers on a 2-bedroom apartment, $148,000, most of it paid in cash, I felt something I had never felt before. Certainty. This was mine. Not the bank's. Not a landlord's. Mine. I was single then. No girlfriend. No prospects, really. Just a man with a hard hat and a savings account and an apartment with bare walls. I furnished it slowly, room by room, paycheck by paycheck. It became the first place in my adult life that felt permanent. I met my ex-wife a year later, when I was 29. She was 27, smart, funny, the kind of person who filled a room just by walking into it. We moved fast. She moved into my apartment within 6 months, and we married when I was 30. My attorney at the time, the one who handled my property closing, gave me a piece of advice I almost ignored. Don't add her name to the deed. It's your premarital asset, he said. Keep it that way. Something in my gut agreed, even though it felt unromantic. I didn't add her name. That decision would end up saving me. The marriage was fine at first. Then it was okay. Then it was something I endured. She wanted more, a bigger place, a better neighborhood, the kind of lifestyle that required a different income bracket than mine. I earned well for construction management. I wasn't wealthy. There's a difference, and she could never accept it. She saw ambition as something measured in square footage and brand names. I saw it as stability and consistency. We were speaking different languages from the start. 2 kids came from that marriage. My son, now 8. My daughter, now 5. They are, without exaggeration, the best things that have ever happened to me. Whatever failures that marriage produced, those 2 children are not among them. The marriage fell apart over 2 years of slow erosion. Her resentment of what she called my lack of ambition. My resentment of her spending habits and the criticism that became her primary form of communication. Then I found the messages, an emotional affair with a coworker. Long conversations. Intimate confessions. Nothing physical that I could prove, but the trust was gone. Not cracked. Gone. I filed for divorce at 32. The legal process was ugly in tone but straightforward in substance. The apartment was a premarital asset, fully documented, purchased entirely with my money before she ever entered my life. There was no dispute on paper. She got the custody arrangement, kids with her during the week, with me on weekends. She moved into her mother's apartment with the children. I stayed in my apartment. On paper, it was a clean split. In reality, the nightmare was just beginning. Update 1, the campaign. Within 3 weeks of the divorce being finalized, I noticed changes in my children. My son, who used to sprint to my car during Friday pickups, started walking slowly with his hands in his pockets. He wouldn't look at me. My daughter, who used to practically vibrate with excitement about weekends at Daddy's, began crying when I picked her up. Not the fussy crying of a tired 5-year-old. The devastated crying of a child who has been told something terrible about someone she loves. I thought it was a normal adjustment to the divorce. Kids process things in waves. I gave them space, extra patience, more bedtime stories, longer hugs. I waited for it to pass. Then one Friday, my son said something that stopped my heart mid-beat. Mom says you took our house. She says we had to leave because you love the apartment more than us. I was gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. I looked at him in the rearview mirror. His face was tight with an anger that didn't belong to an 8-year-old boy. That was an adult's anger, placed in a child's body like a hand inside a puppet. She was poisoning them. Over the next 2 months, the comments kept coming. My daughter, at a weekend breakfast, pushing her cereal around, "Why can't we come home, Daddy? Mom says you won't let us." My son, after a birthday party where he overheard another divorced family's arrangements. "My friend says divorced dads give houses to their kids. Why won't you?" My daughter, sobbing at Sunday drop-off, clutching my leg, "I want my room back. Mom says you won't give it back." Each sentence was a blade, and each one was clearly sharpened by someone else. She taught my 5-year-old to say, "Daddy took our home." A child who can barely write her name was reciting property grievances. That's not a child's pain. That's a mother's script. A 5-year-old doesn't use the phrase, "won't give it back." That's not how children frame the world. Children say, "I want," and "please," and "why." They don't construct accusations about property rights. These weren't my children's thoughts. These were her words falling out of their mouths. I tried direct communication. Called my ex-wife. Kept my voice steady, even though my hands were shaking. Stopped telling the kids I took their home. I bought this apartment before we even met. You know that. Her voice on the phone was eerily calm. Controlled. I'm not telling them anything. They have eyes. They can see their father in a nice apartment while they share a room at their grandmother's house. They drew their own conclusions. A 5-year-old doesn't draw conclusions about property ownership. You're feeding them lines. A pause. Then, prove it. She hung up. And she was right. I couldn't prove it. Not yet. Everything she did was deniable. She was careful. Meticulous, even. This wasn't an emotional woman lashing out after a divorce. This was a strategy. Update 2. The siege. The children were only the first front. The second was social. My ex-wife began telling mutual friends and extended family a very specific version of events. A version so carefully edited it qualified as fiction, but so emotionally potent that no one questioned it. He kept the apartment and put his children on the street. His kids sleep in their grandmother's living room while he lives alone in a 2-bedroom apartment. He cares more about property than his own children. Every sentence was technically adjacent to truth, but fundamentally dishonest. She left out that the apartment was mine before the marriage. She left out that she chose to live with her mother rather than find her own place. She left out that I pay child support every month without fail and had offered to help her find affordable housing. She left out everything that didn't serve the narrative she was constructing. Selfish father, suffering children. And then came the blow I never expected. My mother called on a Tuesday evening. I picked up assuming she wanted to talk about the grandchildren's upcoming school events. I was wrong. "We need to talk about the children," she said. Her voice had that particular tone, the one she used when she had already made up her mind and the conversation was just a formality. "What about them?" "Your ex-wife called me. She told me about the kids. How they're cramped at her mother's. How they cry about wanting their room back. How your daughter asks every night when she can go home." My stomach dropped. "Mom, she's manipulating the kids too. I don't care about your divorce drama. I care about my grandchildren. They need a stable home. You have a home. Transfer the apartment to their names. Be a father." She paused. "A real one." The words landed like a fist. Mom said, "Be a real father." I am a real father. I pay support. I show up every weekend. I fight for my kids. But real father in her definition meant give everything to the mother and disappear. That's not fatherhood. That's surrender. "I am a real father," I said, struggling to keep my voice level. "I pay support. I see them every weekend. I bought that apartment 6 years before I ever met her. It doesn't matter when you bought it. Your children exist now. Their needs come first." I saw the architecture of what was happening. My ex-wife couldn't get the apartment through divorce court. It was a premarital asset, clean and documented. So she was building something else. A siege. Turn the children against me with scripted grief. Turn my mother against me with a weaponized phone call. Turn friends against me with a curated narrative. Create a world where the only path to being a good father ran through handing over my apartment. It wasn't a legal strategy. It was psychological warfare. And my own mother had been recruited without even knowing it. The guilt came at night. 3 in the morning, lying in my apartment, staring at the ceiling, thinking about my daughter crying. About my son's hard eyes. About a crowded room at their grandmother's house. Maybe I should give it up. Maybe that's what a good father does. Maybe property doesn't matter when your children are hurting. The doubt was loudest in those dark hours when logic sleeps and every emotion you've suppressed during the day comes crawling out. Then daylight would come, and I'd remember, my children's pain was being manufactured by the person claiming to alleviate it. Their mother chose to keep them in a cramped room because their discomfort was more useful than their comfort. My ex-wife told everyone I put my children on the street. I offered to help her find housing. I pay child support. She chose to live at her mother's house to maximize the sympathy story. My children's discomfort was her strategy, not my neglect. But guilt doesn't listen to logic. Guilt just sits on your chest and whispers that you're a bad father at 3 in the morning. Update 3. The evidence. My divorce attorney is not a sentimental man. When I sat in his office and laid out everything, the scripted comments, the social campaign, my mother's phone call. He listened with the focused stillness of someone doing math. If you transfer that apartment to the children's names, he said, leaning forward, their mother becomes the de facto controller of that property until they're 18. That's 13 years of her living in your apartment rent-free while you start from zero. And when the kids turn 18, she'll find a way to stay. A lease arrangement. A guilt trip. Something. You won't be giving the apartment to your children. You'll be giving it to your ex-wife with your children as the legal cover. My attorney said if I transferred the apartment to the children, their mother would control it for 13 years. I wouldn't be giving my kids a home. I'd be giving my ex-wife a free apartment with my children as the legal wrapper. She planned this, I said. She's been planning this since the divorce papers were signed. Maybe before. He told me what to do, and I did it. I started documenting everything. My state has one-party consent laws for recording conversations, and I was always a party to the conversations with my children. I began keeping careful records of every scripted comment my kids made, noting dates, exact words, and the context in which they said them. I saved my ex-wife's social media posts, the ones about deadbeat dads and children who suffer for men's pride, each one posted with just enough vagueness to deny they were about me and just enough specificity that everyone knew they were. I screenshotted conversations where she told friends about taking back the apartment for the kids. And through those mutual friends, 2 of them, who saw through her campaign and came to me privately, I got statements. One of them told me directly what my ex-wife had said at a dinner. I'll get that apartment. He'll break eventually. The kids will make sure of it. Read that again. The kids will make sure of it. Her own words. Then I took the most important step. I petitioned the court for a family therapist to work with the children. The court approved. I found a licensed professional who specialized in high-conflict custody situations, someone who had testified in court before and whose assessments carried weight. The therapist met with my children, individually and together, over the course of several weeks. She was gentle, patient, the kind of professional who earns a child's trust through consistency rather than pressure. My son drew pictures. My daughter played with toys and talked. The therapist observed and documented. Her assessment was clinical but devastating. She identified clear signs of parental alienation. My children were repeating phrases they didn't fully understand, phrases that belonged to an adult vocabulary, not a child's. My son's anger toward me was coached, not organic. It had no root in any experience with me, it was parroted from someone else's grievance. My daughter's distress at pickup was triggered by specific language that mirrored her mother's phrasing exactly. The therapist documented everything in a professional report with the specificity that courts require. The therapist found parental alienation, a clinical term for what I already knew. She was using our children as emotional weapons to take my apartment. She weaponized their love for both parents to serve her property ambitions. That's not mothering. That's warfare. Update 4, the court. I went back to court. My attorney presented the case methodically. The documented timeline of my children's scripted comments. The recordings. My ex-wife's social media campaign. The screenshots of her conversations. The statements from mutual friends who heard her articulate the plan openly. And at the center of everything, the therapist's professional assessment. Parental alienation, clearly documented, clinically identified. My ex-wife's attorney tried to minimize. A mother expressing frustration after a difficult divorce is not alienation. She's entitled to her feelings. The children are adjusting. The judge wasn't persuaded. She reviewed the evidence carefully, all of it. The pattern was there, consistent and undeniable. Weeks of scripted comments. A coordinated social campaign. Children repeating adult language about property they had no reason to understand. A therapist's clinical conclusion. None of it existed in isolation. Together, it told a story that was impossible to explain away. The judge modified custody. My share of time increased significantly. Joint custody shifted in my favor. The judge also issued a formal warning to my ex-wife about parental alienation, not a vague suggestion to be mindful, but a clear, direct statement. If this behavior continues, custody will be further modified. And then the judge added something to the record that I hadn't expected. She noted, formally and explicitly, that the apartment was my premarital property and that no claim, moral, legal, or emotional, existed against it. The judge told her on record, the apartment is mine, no claim exists. But she'll never fully accept that. In her mind, the apartment became ours when she moved in. Then it became the children's when they were born. The labels kept changing but the objective stayed the same, make it hers. But it was always mine. Before her. Before them. Mine. My ex-wife walked out of that courtroom furious. She didn't look at me. Her attorney walked beside her with a tight expression of someone recalculating. I walked out exhausted. Not triumphant. Not victorious. Just deeply, completely tired. Vindicated, yes. But vindication doesn't erase the months of 3 a.m. guilt, or the sound of my daughter crying at pickups, or my son's hard little face telling me I stole his home. Update 5. Reckoning and Rebuilding. I met my mother at her house the following week. I brought the court documents. The therapist's report. The evidence. I laid it on her kitchen table, the table where I ate cereal as a child, where she helped me with homework, where she told me she was proud of me when I got my first management position. I laid it all down on that table and watched her read it. She was using your grandchildren as weapons to get my apartment, I said quietly. She taught them scripted lines. She coached a 5-year-old to cry about her room. She called you and performed a mother's grief so convincingly that you sided with her over your own son. And you never asked me what really happened. My mother went pale reading the therapist's report. Her hands trembled holding the pages. I didn't know, she whispered. You didn't ask. You heard, grandchildren suffering, and jumped straight to, give her the apartment. You didn't call me to ask my side. You didn't ask a single question. You chose her story over your own son. She seemed so sincere. She cried on the phone. She said the children were miserable. She's been performing misery since the divorce. She's exceptionally good at it. She convinced you. She convinced my friends. She convinced 2 small children to recite her grievances as if they were their own. But a therapist and a judge saw through it. The question is why you didn't. My mother started crying. Not the dramatic kind. The quiet, defeated kind that comes when you realize you failed someone you love. I just wanted the children to be okay. So did I. That's why I went to court instead of giving their mother my apartment. Protecting them means protecting them from manipulation. Not rewarding the manipulator. We sat in silence for a long time after that. The reconciliation didn't happen that day. It took months. Eventually, she came to me with an apology that felt genuine, not just regretful but self-aware. I should have listened to you first, she said. I should have asked questions before taking sides. I believed a story because believing it was easier than thinking my son might be right about the mother of my grandchildren. I forgave her. Not immediately. Not completely at first. But enough. She didn't act from malice. She acted from love that had been misdirected by a skilled manipulator. That's not evil. That's human. And I've made enough of my own mistakes to know that being human isn't something that needs eternal punishment. It needs understanding and the willingness to do better. My ex-wife followed the court orders after that. Barely, and with the minimum compliance of someone who resents every letter of a legal document, but she followed them. The scripted comments decreased. They didn't disappear entirely. She's smarter now, more subtle, and some resentments run too deep to be silenced by a judge's warning. But the weaponization scaled back. My son stopped being angry around month 8 of therapy. One afternoon, sitting at my kitchen table working on a drawing, he said something quietly without looking up. Dad, I'm sorry I said you took our house. Mom told me to say that. He's 8 years old. 8. And he already sees through the manipulation. Kids aren't stupid. They're just small. And smallness is temporary. I knelt down next to him and told him he had nothing to apologize for. That none of this was his fault. That I love him and his sister no matter what anyone tells them. He leaned into me for a hug, and for the first time in almost a year, it wasn't stiff or reluctant. It was just my son, holding on. My daughter's healing was quieter. She stopped crying at pickups. Started bringing things to my apartment on purpose. A favorite book, a stuffed animal, a blanket. Colonizing the space the way children do when they feel safe. One weekend I found her arranging her stuffed animals on her bed in my apartment with the serious concentration of a museum curator. She was making it hers. That was enough. 1 year later. I still have the apartment. I redecorated the kids' room. Not because I had to. Because I wanted it to feel like theirs. My son has a desk by the window where he does his homework. There's a lamp he picked out himself. It has a dinosaur on the base, which he swears is a Spinosaurus, not a T-Rex, and he will correct you. My daughter has a reading corner with a small bookshelf and a beanbag chair in a shade of purple she spent 20 minutes selecting at the store. Their drawings are on the fridge. Their shoes are by the door. Their cereal is in the cabinet. It's their space. In their father's home. Not because I surrendered the property under psychological siege, but because I kept it and made it a real home for them. My ex-wife eventually moved out of her mother's apartment and rents her own small place now. She's calmer, whether from the court warning, from time, or from the simple reality that her strategy failed and continuing it would cost her custody. I don't know which, and I don't particularly care. The result is what matters. The war isn't over. With someone like her, it may never be completely over. But the active battle has ended, and in the quiet that followed, my children have started to heal. It's a Friday evening. I pull up to the pickup spot. My son comes running to the car, backpack bouncing, already talking before the door is open. Dad, I have a school project about ecosystems and I want to do the ocean because did you know there's a fish that has a light on its head? Can we work on it at your place? I need poster board. My daughter walks behind him, slower, carrying her stuffed bear in one arm and a folded piece of paper in the other. She climbs into her car seat and hands me the paper. It's a drawing, our apartment building, a little crooked, with 4 windows and a bright yellow sun. At the bottom, in careful wobbly letters, for Daddy's FRIJ. We drive to the apartment. I make dinner, help with homework, read bedtime stories. 2 books for my daughter tonight because she negotiates like a future attorney. I tuck her in, adjust the purple blanket. She looks up at me with heavy eyes and whispers, I like my room here, Daddy. No script, no performance, no coached language about property rights or stolen homes. Just a child, in her bed, feeling safe. I close her door gently and stand in the hallway of my apartment. I can hear my son brushing his teeth in the bathroom, humming something tuneless and happy. I can hear my daughter already murmuring to her stuffed bear as she drifts toward sleep. My apartment. My kids. My life. Still standing. Still mine. She wanted me to give up this apartment. Said it was for the children. But the children are here right now. In their beds, in their room, in their father's home. The home I built before they existed and fought to keep so they'd always have somewhere to come. That's what a real father does. Not surrender his home to an ex-wife's manipulation. Not reward psychological warfare with a property transfer. A real father fights, in court, in therapy, in the quiet moments where guilt tells you to give in and logic tells you to hold on. I held on. My daughter is humming in her bed. My son is planning a school project at my kitchen table tomorrow morning. This apartment isn't just property. It's the place where my children learn that their father doesn't break. That stability isn't a building, it's a person who refuses to be moved. I am that person. This is that place. And nobody, not their mother, not my mother, not guilt, not 3 in the morning doubt, is taking it from them. Or from me.